A stranger just knocked on my door, and like any grumpy old man, I pretended I wasn't home. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not that bad of a person. I don't yell at kids to get off my lawn or chase the mailman away. But after 76 years on this earth, I've learned that unexpected visitors usually bring one of three things. 1. Bad news. 2. A request for money. 3. A sales pitch for something I neither need nor want. So naturally, when I heard the knock, I stayed put. But then there was another knock, and another. I huffed and peeked through the blinds. A young woman stood on my porch, shifting from foot to foot, cradling something in her hands. À pied? What in the world? Now people don't just show up at a grumpy old man's house with a pie unless they want something. My first thought, great. Either she's about to sell me overpriced kitchenware, or she's one of those do-gooders trying to fix my loneliness. I considered staying quiet, but then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a forced, awkward kind of smile. A real one. The kind that made it hard to be rude. Mr. Walter? She called, her voice light but confident. I froze. How does she know my name? I didn't remember ordering anything. I sure as hell didn't sign up for any community outreach program. Then she spoke again. I know this is unexpected, but I brought you something. A homemade apple pie. Apple pie. My one true weakness. Damn it. I sighed, cracked the door open an inch, and squinted at her. Who are you? My name's Emily, she said, holding up the pie like an offering to a stubborn old king. I just wanted to bring you this. A small gesture, you know. A small gesture? My gut told me there was more to this than a random act of kindness. You selling something? I asked. She chuckled. No, sir. Then what do you want? Emily hesitated, then shrugged. Just to share a pie with you. I should have said no. Should have thanked her politely and shut the door. But the scent of cinnamon and warm apples was already creeping into my nose, and my stomach had a mind of its own. Fine, I muttered, opening the door wider. Come in before you let the cold in too. And just like that, a complete stranger walked into my kitchen with a pie. I had no idea my life was about to change forever. Emily settled into the chair across from me, looking around my kitchen like she was committing it to memory. Meanwhile, I busied myself with plates and coffee, stealing glances at her. Who is she? And why did she seem so comfortable here? So I finally said, setting down her plate, Do you always go around handing out pies to old men? She grinned. Only the special ones. I snorted. Flattery will get you nowhere, kid. She took a bite of pie and let out a small, satisfied sigh. Perfect. I eyed my own slice suspiciously before taking a bite. And let me tell you, it was perfect. The kind of perfect that tasted like Sunday mornings in a small-town diner. I swallowed, then pointed my fork at her. All right, I'll admit it, the pie's good. But that still doesn't explain why you're here. Emily twirled her fork between her fingers. I guess you could say I'm here because of a story. That got my attention. What kind of story? She set her fork down carefully, her expression shifting. A story my mother used to tell me. About a kind man who made the best apple pie in town. I frowned. A pie maker? Not just any pie maker, she said, leaning forward slightly. Someone who worked at a little diner a long time ago. Someone who always made sure a certain little girl never went hungry. A strange sensation crept up my spine. A memory just out of reach. And what does this have to do with me? I asked cautiously. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and crumpled. She unfolded it gently and slid it across the table. I picked it up, squinting at the faded writing. Then my breath caught. The napkin was old, the edges slightly torn, but the message was clear. For the little girl who always dreams of apple pie, keep dreaming, kid. My own handwriting. My own words. From decades ago. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling slightly as I set the napkin down. Memories flooded back. A small girl, skinny with big eyes, standing outside the window of Dottie's diner. She never begged. Never asked for anything. Just watched. And every evening, when the dinner rush slowed down, I would leave a small plate on the windowsill. Just one slice of pie. She never said a word, never made a sound. But the next day, the plate was always empty. And then one day, she was gone. I had assumed life had swallowed her whole, like it did so many others. I had never expected to hear about her again. Yet here I was, holding a napkin I had written on decades ago, looking into the face of a young woman who seemed to know more about me than I did myself. "Who is your mother?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily's eyes softened. "Her name was Claire," she said, "and she never forgot the man who saved her from hunger with a slice of apple pie." A rush of emotion hit me so hard I had to grip the table. Claire, the little girl I had helped all those years ago. She had a daughter now, a daughter who had somehow found me. I looked up at Emily, my heart pounding. "She remembered?" I asked hoarsely. "She never forgot," Emily murmured. And just like that, time folded in on itself. I wasn't just an old man in a lonely house anymore. I was the young cook who had once placed a slice of pie on a windowsill, never knowing it would come back to him in the form of a stranger holding a pie of her own. I stared at Emily, my mouth slightly open, my mind racing to catch up with what she had just said. Claire, the little girl from all those years ago, the one who had pressed her small, cold hands against the diner's window, watching the pies like they were pieces of gold. I had thought about her from time to time over the years, wondered what had happened to her, if she ever found a way out of whatever tough situation she was in. But life has a way of making memories fade, and as time went on, I convinced myself that maybe she had just been a passing moment in my long, uneventful life. Yet here I was, sitting across from her daughter, holding a napkin with my own handwriting from decades ago. She kept this?" I finally managed to say. Emily nodded. "She kept it her whole life. She told me it was her proof that kindness still existed." My throat felt tight. I set the napkin down carefully, like it might shatter. "I don't understand," I muttered, rubbing a hand over my face. "I was just some guy making pies in a diner. Why would she hold on to something like this for so long?" Emily tilted her head slightly, as if trying to figure out how to explain something obvious. "Because to you, it was just a piece of pie," she said softly. "But to her, it was the first time someone had ever cared enough to give her something without expecting anything in return." I swallowed hard. "She never said anything," I murmured. "She was just a kid, Mr. Walter. A scared, hungry little girl who thought the world had forgotten about her." I closed my eyes for a moment, the weight of her words settling deep in my chest. "What happened to her?" I asked after a long pause. Emily sighed. "She had a rough childhood. Moved around a lot. Barely had enough to eat some days. But she always remembered you. She used to tell me that whenever things got really bad, she would think about those slices of pie, and it reminded her that there was still good in the world." I stared down at the napkin, my vision blurring slightly. "She never came back," I said quietly. "One day she was just gone. The diner closed," Emily explained, "and not long after, she and my grandmother had to leave town. She always wanted to come back and find you, but life kept getting in the way." I let out a long breath, shaking my head. All this time, I thought I was just some old man flipping burgers and baking pies. I never thought, my voice trailed off, that you changed someone's life? Emily finished for me. I chuckled dryly, shaking my head. "Guess I never saw myself as that important." Emily smiled, but there was something sad in her eyes. "She always said she owed you a thank you," she said. "She never got to say it herself." A heavy silence filled the room. I already knew what was coming before she said the next words. "She passed away last year." I inhaled sharply, my fingers gripping the edge of the table. "Oh." Emily offered a small, bittersweet smile. "She wanted to come back and tell you herself. But it was too late. Too late." I stared at the table, feeling something deep and painful settle in my chest. All those years I had wondered about her, and now I'd never get the chance to see her again. But then I looked at Emily, sitting there, holding the napkin, her face a perfect blend of sorrow and warmth. "She never forgot you," Emily said gently. "And neither will I." And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe some things, some kindnesses, never really disappear. The kitchen was quiet except for the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall. I let out a slow breath, rubbing my hands over my face, trying to process everything. So I said finally, forcing my voice to be steady, "You came all this way, just to bring me a pie?" Emily chuckled softly. "That, and to say thank you." I huffed a small laugh, shaking my head. All these years, I thought that little girl had just moved on, forgotten about some old cook in a diner. Emily smiled. She never forgot, and she passed that kindness on to others. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, she became a teacher," Emily said. "She always made sure her students had something to eat if they needed it. She told me she wanted to be the kind of person you were to her." I let out a breathless chuckle, shaking my head in disbelief. Well, I'll be damned. I looked at Emily, really looked at her. There was something familiar now, something about the way she carried herself, the way she smiled. I could see Claire in her. "You know," I said, leaning back in my chair, I was starting to think I'd have to spend the rest of my days talking to myself. "You might have just saved me from becoming a crazy old hermit." Emily laughed. "Glad to be of service." A comfortable silence settled between us. Then, after a moment, I cleared my throat. "You know, I still remember how to bake a mean apple pie." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, yeah," I said, nodding toward the kitchen. "And I think it's about time I taught someone else." Her face lit up. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "Well," I said, pushing myself up from the chair with a grunt, "if you're going to keep showing up at my house with pies, might as well make sure you're making them right." She grinned. "Deal." And just like that, my quiet, lonely house wasn't so quiet anymore. Over the next few weeks, Emily came back every Saturday, and together we baked. We laughed. We talked about her mother, about life, about everything in between. And somewhere between the measuring cups and rolling pins, I realized something. I had spent so many years thinking my best days were behind me, that I had already given the world everything I had to offer. But kindness doesn't just disappear. It doesn't fade with time. Sometimes it comes back to you, wrapped in a warm slice of apple pie.